Charlie Kirk eradicates a college snowflake who thinks that voter ID and requiring it is racist. Guys, this is going to be a lot of fun. I know you're going to like it. This whole argument about voter ID being racist is just so stupid and overplayed and overdone. Not to mention, ironically enough, racist itself to the minorities that it claims are, I don't know, too stupid or something to get the idea. It just doesn't make sense. So we're going to get right into it. It's going to be fun. But first, everybody, help me out and do me a big favor here. Like our video, share it around, and if you're new, subscribe to the Resist the Mainstream YouTube channel so we keep bringing you guys this great content. As always, everybody, I'm your host, Darian. Let's get into the video.
So let me ask you a question. So in the CRT literature, what do they think of white people or whiteness?
Who would you like me to quote?
Kimberly Crenshaw.
I haven't read Kimberly Crenshaw.
She says that whiteness is a cancer or a toxin on our society.
The concept of whiteness, the racial concept of whiteness.
Okay, so what is whiteness?
What is whiteness?
Yeah, define it.
As Kimberly Crenshaw would probably say, the sort of construction of privilege that comes with being white in this country.
Right, so what privilege do you and I as white people have that black people don't have?
Yeah, great question. On applications that are blindly judged, white-sounding names are often given the job more, they're paid more.
Not true. In fact, it's the opposite. There's black privilege right now. It's called affirmative action, where underqualified blacks are taking Asians and white people's places in universities across the country. True or false?
True.
Okay, so yeah, there's black privilege, not white privilege.
I actually don't think affirmative action is how we address education inequality.
Okay, well, that affirmative action is still largely supported by the CRT regime. But let's get back to CRT, to the essence of it.
Sure.
CRT believes in one manifestation of its ideology is black-only dormitories. So white people are not allowed. Do you believe in black-only dormitories?
No, and I don't have to agree with every aspect of an ideology to argue for it.
So then what part of CRT do you like? Because they call whiteness a toxin, black-only dormitories, and if you want to talk about like ideological or intellectual sloppiness, the 1619 Project was...
I think it's very sloppy.
Okay, we agree. Nicole Hannah-Jones.
I think it's overstated, and I think some of the parts are inaccurate.
Okay, good.
The parts of CRT that I think are most relevant and, very factually, you can, what am I trying to say? There's a lot of evidence for them, is the fact that previous inequalities, such as the institution of slavery, such as our treatment of Native Americans, do, in fact, affect those populations today. And you were saying before, in, inner cities, there's a lot more crime. And a lot of that is because of redlining and other, practices that come directly from the mistreatment of minorities previously in this country.
So I want to make sure I understand. So black people make up 13% of the American population.
Oh, 1350, my favorite.
Yes, exactly. Why do they commit 55% of all the murders?
Super great question. It's basically a very complex intersection of race and economic status. It's pretty well known that minority people tend to be in a lower economic status because of discrimination that they face.
So then why don't poor Asians commit a lot of murders?
Also a great question. Asian people weren't originally brought to America on purpose like black people, and they weren't already present here like natives.
Wait, so blacks murder because they were brought here 250 years ago?
So the answer is culture. All right, just want to get that off my chest because that's the very obvious truth. Also, another obvious truth is that this economy sucks and Joe Biden is to blame, guys. This inflation is out of hand, and that is why I am now investing in precious metals, and I think you guys should too. Check it out, guys. We have partnered with Goldco. It's a great company, highly rated, fantastic customer service. They will give you the white glove treatment. So check it out, guys. Go to rtmgold.com. You click the link in the description or type in your web browser. There are a lot of perks here, okay? You can roll over your IRA into 401k, penalty and tax-free for one. Yes, penalty and tax-free. What's more, you can get a free gold kit. Yes, free to help you make this decision. We understand it's a big one, so we want to equip you with as much knowledge as possible, as does Goldco. So check it out, everybody. Go to rtmgold.com. You can type the link in your web browser or click the link in your description. Once again, that's rtmgold.com.
I would like to finish.
Okay, just answer. It's very simple.
I am answering.
No, I know, but you're not really.
I am. Asian Americans predominantly immigrate here for work reasons. They come from already wealthy countries. They're already wealthy when they get here. Crime is committed primarily by poor people.
First of all, that's not true. Talk to anybody from Vietnam. Who's Vietnamese? Anybody? Did your family come here wealthy?
No.
Yes
not wealthy,
and no. Okay.
But not.
Yes
I'm not saying they come here. Okay.
The average Vietnamese does not come here wealthy.
I'm not. Okay. I perhaps misspoke. Not wealthy, but a lot of the, you complain about it all the time. A lot of the immigration from countries that border us, right? It's sort of desperate people who are of a lower economic status, right? And they're coming here for a better life.
So two things. Number one, there's been more blacks that have legally immigrated to this country in the last 30 years than were ever brought as slaves. That's number one. Number two, you still haven't answered the question.
I'm trying to.
Why,
it's a complicated answer.
Black people are only 13% of the population, yet they commit 55% of the murders. Why?
Because black people tend to be in lower economic statuses because of
this is fine.
Yet poor whites and poor Asians are nowhere to be found committing crimes at nearly the same rate. Not even close.
This is great.
Basically,
so you think that poverty equals crime?
I think that it's highly correlated, and there's a lot of studies
This is where
on
we
that.
disagree. What an insult to the working poor of this country.
So why do you think black people commit more
Well,
crime,
first of
Charlie
all,
Kirk?
so how? Let me ask you a question as
No,
my
answer
answer.
it. Go on.
What percentage of blacks have a father around when they're raised?
I'm not sure.
20%.
So that's why you
80% of
think it
blacks
is.
do not have a stable father around. It is the most predictable way to end up in prison, end up as a murderer or a criminal.
And why
It's
do
not a
you think that's
racism
a problem?
It's not a white supremacy problem. It's a fact that black fathers impregnate women and they don't stay around with the women
And
that they have
why,
impregnated.
Charlie Kirk, do you think that happens more in the black community compared to others?
It's threefold. Number one, we subsidize single motherhood. Number two, it's culture. It's accepted in the black community, and it
so
shouldn't
it's
be.
culture. Okay, okay.
Don't take my
I
word
see.
for it. Read Thomas Sowell's own book on how black culture allows single motherhood to continue into a nanny state type practice. 75% of black youth are raised out of father in the home.
We love Thomas Sowell. By the way, fun fact about him, he's one of the first academics to study affirmative action on a serious level and challenge it. He has a study that's as old as about, I think, 2004 that analyzes affirmative action not only in the United States, but around the world as well. Spoiler alert, Sowell is not a fan.
75%. Is that a bigger problem or not a bigger problem than whiteness, white privilege, or white supremacy? How
They
can
should
you
all
blame?
be addressed, and they're all related.
Okay, how is a white person to blame for the fact that 75% of blacks?
Oh, individual white people aren't at all to blame.
Okay, we agree.
Yeah.
So, but wouldn't it be more like smarter to be like, hey, that this is not about systemic racism. Like, stop impregnating your women and abandoning them?
Well, the way to incentivize not impregnating women and abandoning them is increasing access to healthcare, into housing, into everything that we know increases
we've
those
done
outcomes
that.
for people.
So we have spent $30 trillion on the social welfare system since 1965. Black people are poorer, and the single motherhood went from 25% to now 75 to 80%. So the more money we've spent on black America, the less fathers we have, because black women divorced black men and married the government.
And do you think that's a problem inherent to black people?
No, it's not. It's happening now in white communities and Hispanic communities. It's just the worst in black America.
And why do you think that is?
Why is it the worst in black America? There's also a cultural problem. There is, and we have to be
so
honest about
it's
it.
just that black people are
No,
sort
let me
of
ask you a question.
like
The
that, in your
average
opinion.
music that a black person in Compton is listening to, is it about contemplating the good, the true, and the beautiful, or is it about being a gangbanger and trying to get as much money and sleep with as many girls as you can?
I would actually like to think I would be offended by that.
Do you think
If
the
not, if
average
I listened
black
to
kid in
rap-
Compton is listening to Beethoven or some sort of gangster rap music that glorifies gangster culture?
Silly question. Rap wasn't created to glorify gangster culture. So even though there is
Okay,
rap,
I mean,
I'm sure
you're not
that's
answering.
doing
You're
that.
dodging the question because.
Okay, I'm sure they're listening to rap.
Okay.
So you think
there
rap
go.
music makes them
No,
leave
I'm
their
not.
mom?
Do you think the cultural expectation in black America is that you stay with the woman that you impregnate?
Within black communities? I can't speak on that.
Okay, the answer is no. It's not. It's not expected.
Okay, and do you think that is-
hold on, in white Anglo-Saxon Protestant communities,
Oh,
it's a
okay.
fact. Hold on. In upper middle class white communities,
Upper middle class. Say that part louder.
yeah, upper middle class white Anglo-Saxon Protestant communities, if you impregnate a woman, you are looked down upon and we do not think highly of you if you abandon the woman that you impregnate.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cultural difference. Has nothing to do with money. Has nothing to do with anything except norms. And the norms that have infected black America are destroying it from within.
Did he just call the white people upper middle class? Whoa, the racist. On the whole note about the black people and the culture, remember what Lyndon Baines Johnson said when he pushed his infamous Great Society. There's a quote attributed to him. We'll have those N-words voting Democrat for over 200 years. Interesting.
We need more fathers, not less. We need more dads around and less drag queen story hour. We need more young blacks to be able to look up to role models that are not leaving all the time and are not just saying, hey, I impregnated her, so be it. It's a toxin, and if we don't address that as the root cause, oh, it's white supremacy, it's injustice, it's economics, we're dancing around the core of the issue.
I guess what I'm saying is, right, and you've perfectly actually laid out the dichotomy here. It is a fact, obviously, that black people disproportionately commit crime in this country. No one's arguing that. But you either believe that that is due to a complex intersection of social, economic, and like leftover effects from previous inequalities, or you believe that that is an inherent trait to the race.
No, I don't, because they weren't that way in the 1940s and 50s. Black America was one of the most peaceful, flourishing, fastest growing economically communities in the country. It's not genetic. You're trying to point something on me that I don't believe. Instead,
But then
Black
you do
America,
believe that it's
hold on.
not genetic, so you do think CRT is correct.
Hold on a
That's
second.
kinda what I'm getting at.
In the 1940s and 1950s, Black America was prosperous and was on pace to be richer and wealthier than white America. More dads were staying with the women that they were with. There was monogamy. What changed?
You're supporting my argument.
No, hold on.
More dads to the tune of 1 out of 4 leaving the house rather than 3 out of 4. It's actually a huge difference. We're talking 50%.
But answer the question. What changed? Did America get more racist since 1950?
I would argue there were more racist policies passed. There were more
Hold on a
policies
second.
dedicated
In
to
the
lining off those communities
1950s,
and pushing them into poor housing and poor schools.
Wait a second. In the 1950s, Jackie Robinson had not even broken the color barrier. We had Jim Crow laws. We hadn't passed the Civil Rights Act, and we hadn't passed the Voting Rights Act. Yet blacks were better in the 1950s per capita than they are today. So we have become less racist. We've passed more anti-racist laws and given more stuff, and blacks are worse than they were 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Why?
So you're equating here institutional and social racism. Social racism was certainly worse in the 1950s. I'm sure everyone would agree. But institutional racism occurs when policies are passed against people.
Come on.
Which can increase over time, and it did.
You're not being intellectually honest. You know that. There was black-only drinking fountains in the 1950s. We don't have those anymore. Well, we're bringing it back with black-only dormitories. But we had, for example, in the antebellum South in the 1950s, we had white-only communities, by law. We got rid of that with the Civil Rights Act. But it didn't. Okay. Unfortunately, we look around. The numbers speak for themselves. Black youth are less likely to have fathers. They're not doing as well as far as economically. They commit more crime. So something changed. And our argument is what changed is three things. Number one, the imposition of the Great Society Project by Lyndon Baines Johnson of spending $30 trillion since 1960s on Section 8 housing, on welfare, on, all sorts, where, as I said, that young black women married the government and they divorced young black men. And then we also have had, as Thomas Sowell and as Clarence Thomas would say, the soft bigotry of low expectations. And we have been afraid to get to the root of the issue or even speak about it because we don't want to be called a racist.
So what is imposing those low expectations?
Part of it is like white academic culture. I'll give you an example. I'm not saying you believe this, but Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, has come out and said having an ID to vote is racist. That is code for saying black people are too dumb to get a voter ID.
You're doing it again. You're simplifying a very nuanced, complex argument from the real people who are making it.
Is voter ID racist?
Obviously not, Charlie.
Okay, all right.
Do you want to know where the argument comes from? I can eloquently tell you.
Eloquently tell me why voter ID is racist or whatever.
Certain policies in southern states were proposed that would, I think the quote from the person who decided the case was, with surgical precision, target the times where black people were voting and make it illegal or harder for them to get that, to come at that time. And then they were targeting the type of ID that black voters had and making that specific type of ID illegal. That is racist.
Perfectly fair. How does that impact today, saying that every citizen, if you need an ID to vote, just that aside, why is it racist?
Because we have to have, obviously humans are making those decisions, right? And so if there is still institutional racism and people in power that are racist, we can't trust those institutions to make those decisions without discriminating.
Just a bunch of nonsense. I mean, obviously she thinks that black people are too stupid to get an ID. That's why she says it's racist. That voter ID law. I don't know what other conclusion you could draw on that whole bit about the soft bigotry of low expectations. Yeah, there are plenty of examples. I'll give you one good one. There was a study that found that white liberals actually talk dumber when speaking to black people. And frankly, I actually noticed this myself in my own personal life before I even read any study about it. I'm not exactly a person who thinks you need studies to prove what you know, what you don't, but it is kind of funny that it reaffirms the real life experience. I don't know how many times I'd see college professors is a great example. They call in a black student in the class and they'd start talking like, oh, wow, yeah, that's really smart of you. It's a really good point, sport. They get so excited all of a sudden. It's just kind of weird, almost like they're talking to a little kid, except that little kid is, a 22-year-old adult or older in some cases. Just a bit odd. It reminds me of American Idol. You guys ever watch that? Look at how Simon Cowell interacts with black people. He has this whole reputation as the tough guy, the tough judge. He's here for no nonsense. He's going to criticize everything. Well, I swear, sometimes I'll watch him and you'll see a white person do, a decent act. It's not a masterclass, but it's something pretty good. And he'll just rip it apart. Oh, that was terrible. It was awful. You did this really bad, that bad. It's a no from me. No. Then you have a black group go and they'll do some mediocre dance. And then Simon Cowell will just sit there. Well done. It's the best performance I've ever seen. I'm not even kidding. He will say things that hyperbolic. Talk about how it's the greatest performance ever. And I'm just sitting here like, dude, we all know what's going on. You're trying to look PC and woke, and frankly, it's pathetic. You look like a loser. Just sad.
No racism do we have in this country right now?
What you just named it.
What?
1350.
Okay, well, I mean,
affirmative action needs to happen because there is not that many minorities in these higher educations or higher education institutions.
Okay, so you're being clear, which is then you lower standards.
No.
Affirmative action always does. Affirmative action lowers standards by definition.
I'm saying why affirmative action was introduced. I'm not arguing for it.
Were you asking me why it was introduced, or?
No, I'm saying you agree that's why it was introduced.
Well, I agree why it was. I don't think it ever should have been, but yes.
Right, but there is institutional inequality, yes?
Well, I wouldn't even use the word inequality. I mean, I don't love looking at it that way, but of course, white people generally are richer than black people in this country.
Richer and more represented in politics and schools, yes?
Somewhat yes and no.
Why do you think that is, Charlie?
Well, hold on a second. Let's ask the question here. Represented how? So, I mean,
look at Congressman.
So, no, hold on a second. Are white people...
Why do you think that is? I have a few good responses. For one, white people will get married, they'll stay married, and they typically hold down a consistent job. So there are a couple reasons. Another, more obvious reason is very simple. We're a white majority country. Of course, there are more white people represented in society. Before you say, oh, disproportionately, yeah, I refer to my first example about holding a steady job and holding a marriage. Those things matter, whether you like it or not.
People represented fairly in the National Basketball Association.
Who cares? What political
Hold on,
power
I
does
thought
the
we're all
national...
about fair representation.
Listen.
I think that it should, by law, half of the NBA should be white.
Great, fine.
And the product would suck.
Lobby for it.
Because
I don't
blacks
care.
are much better at basketball than we whites are.
What political power does the NBA have?
A lot, actually. The NBA reaches millions of people every day. They have slogans that people internalize. In fact, if the NBA had no political power, why would they have to wear Black Lives Matter on all their jerseys? Why would politicians try to get their endorsements all the time? The NBA is more powerful than Congress in some ways of shaping the minds.
I think it's your turn to be academically dishonest
Hold on
now,
a second.
but
No,
sure.
but if you want fair representation, just to be clear, then why would you not be against whites, by law, being half of the National Basketball Association? Right now, black people make up 88% of the NBA.
Do it, great. Who cares?
No,
I don't care.
but-
I'm saying,
Okay.
right, so here's my point.
All right, fine. I have a shot, everybody.
Please listen. If we...
I could play for the Lakers.
I hope... Do it, Charlie. I'll come to your games. I'll do...
Well, guys, we're gonna have to cut it off right there. It does keep going for a bit. But here's a question. Do you want to see a part 2? Can't make any guarantees here, but I don't know. Let us know what you think, guys. With all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Please comment below. Let us know your thoughts on the video. If you want to see more of this, if you want to see something else, what other kind of content you want to see soon, we want to hear it all. So please do comment. And thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys again soon. God bless.